The Challenger explosion is etched in the memory of every American who lived through the 80s. But what exactly led to this famous national tragedy? How could such a catastrophic event occur despite NASA's rigorous checks and balances on all its equipment? The specifics of what unfolded when the Challenger exploded remain significant even though the shuttle program is no longer operational. Stay tuned as we explore shocking facts about the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster. Now let's rewind to January of 1986, originally constructed in 1975 as a test vehicle for the Space Shuttle program. The Challenger didn't transition into an operational spacecraft until 1979. Its inaugural launch took place in 1983, marking the program's first-ever spacewalk mission. However, this was just the beginning of the Challenger's series of groundbreaking endeavors. Notably, it was the shuttle that facilitated significant milestones, such as carrying the first female American astronaut, Sally Ride, and the first African-American astronaut, Guion Bluford. The Challenger's flight was poised to make history, largely due to one of its crew members, 37-year-old Christa McAuliffe. Despite her usual role as a social studies teacher at Concord High School in New Hampshire, McAuliffe had been chosen by NASA's Teacher in Space program to become the first educator in space. With the aim of inspiring children and garnering attention for NASA, McAuliffe was slated to accompany the Challenger astronauts into orbit and conduct educational activities during the mission. Given McAuliffe's involvement, the launch garnered extensive media coverage. Moreover, NASA provided numerous schools with a direct satellite feed, allowing thousands of school children, including McAuliffe's own students, to witness the event live. Christa McAuliffe wasn't the only notable figure slated to accompany the Challenger crew who would capture the attention of children. NASA also endeavored to include Big Bird, the beloved Sesame Street character, on the shuttle. They even reached out to Carol Spinney, the actor behind the iconic Yellow Muppet, to discuss his potential participation in the mission. Although the plan never received approval from Mission Control, NASA confirmed in 2015 that discussions had indeed taken place with Spinney and the Sesame Street producers. The pilot assigned to the mission, designated STS-52L by NASA, was Mike Smith. This mission was to be both his first and last spaceflight. Smith also holds the distinction of uttering the final words recorded by any member of the Challenger crew. Just moments before the explosion, the shuttle's voice recorder captured Smith saying, "Uh-oh," indicating that at least one crew member was aware that something was amiss. Pilot Mike Smith wasn't the only individual who sensed that something was amiss prior to the tragic explosion. On the evening before the scheduled launch, a group of engineers from a NASA contractor known as Morton Thiokol attempted to persuade their superiors to postpone the mission. During a meeting, these engineers highlighted that the launch was slated to occur in colder weather conditions than any previous shuttle launch. This was concerning because the rubber O-rings, responsible for sealing various parts of the shuttle, had a history of failing in chilly temperatures. Unfortunately, the engineers' warnings were disregarded by their managers. Following the meeting, one of these engineers, Bob Eberling, confided in his wife, expressing his belief that the mission was doomed to fail. In hindsight, Eberling recalled that despite the engineers' concerns, NASA remained steadfast in their determination to proceed with the launch, seemingly confident in their decisions. However, as events unfolded, it became tragically clear that their confidence was misplaced. Following the disaster, Eberling made the decision to retire. In the years that followed, he openly shared with the media how the weight of his decision to proceed with the launch, despite being overruled, continued to haunt him throughout his life. The engineers from Morton Thiokol, whose concerns had been dismissed, were ultimately proven right in their predictions. Despite launching in below-freezing temperatures, the shuttle proceeded with liftoff. However, shortly after liftoff, a critical failure occurred in the O-ring seal of the right rocket booster. This resulted in the escape of heated gas from the rocket, vaporizing the material connecting the booster to the shuttle's tank. The consequence was the formation of a lethal combination of liquid oxygen and hydrogen gas. At an altitude of 46,000 feet, this combination ignited, transforming the Challenger's fuel tank into a massive fireball. Remarkably, despite this catastrophic event, the solid fuel strap-on boosters remained unaffected, continuing to propel the shuttle upwards. The Challenger didn't actually explode. A cloud of fire engulfed the space shuttle just 73 seconds after liftoff at an altitude of some 46,000 feet, 14,000 meters. It looked like an explosion. The media called it an explosion, and even NASA officials mistakenly described it that way initially. But later investigations showed that, in fact, there was no detonation or explosion in the way we commonly understand the concept. A seal in the shuttle's right solid-fuel rocket booster, designed to prevent leaks during liftoff, weakened in the frigid temperatures and failed, and hot gas began pouring through the leak. The fuel tank itself collapsed and tore apart, and the resulting flood of liquid oxygen and hydrogen created the huge fireball believed by many to be an explosion. Horrifying evidence astronauts killed in Challenger disaster didn't die instantly. Initially, it appeared that the shuttle had been destroyed in the blast, with hopes of space exploration dashed in an instant. Yet chilling revelations have emerged in the 34 years since the disaster, suggesting that the crew may not have perished immediately and could have survived for several seconds following the explosion. Everything appeared to be proceeding smoothly on the night of the launch. Commander Francis Scobie had just issued the now haunting command, "Go throttle up," and the mission appeared to be on track for success. However, mere seconds later, another voice broke through the silence of mission control. Pilot Michael Smith uttered a simple, "uh-oh," before all electronic communication with the space shuttle abruptly ceased. On the ground, spectators could only watch helplessly as events unfolded in the sky before them, gripped by a sense of dread. Initially, it seemed as though a catastrophic explosion had torn the rocket apart. Yet, 6 months following the tragic flight, Dr. Joseph Kerwin, Director of Life Sciences at the Johnson Space Center, submitted his report on the cause of death of the Challenger astronauts. Remarkably, the module carrying the crew was discovered approximately 18 miles from the launch site, submerged in approximately 100 feet of water. Details regarding what happened to the bodies of the crew members have never been made public, but there has been a thorough examination of the condition of the module. In a chilling revelation, Dr. Kerwin's report stated that the force of the explosion was insufficient to kill or even seriously injure those on board. He concluded that the cause of death for the Space Shuttle Challenger's crew was inconclusive. Despite NASA's assertion that all 7 crew members perished instantly in the explosion, the Challenger was obliterated at an altitude of 48,000 feet above the Earth's surface. Astonishingly, it continued to ascend for another 25 seconds before hurtling into the Atlantic Ocean. Contrary to appearances, the space shuttle did not explode immediately after liftoff. Instead, it was engulfed in flames mere seconds into the ascent when a booster, meant to prevent fuel tank leaks, faltered and failed. The intense heat from the gas caused the fuel tank to collapse and rupture, resulting in a massive fireball tearing through parts of the Challenger. Initially, the shuttle remained intact and continued its ascent, but the immense atmospheric forces eventually tore it apart, sending it hurtling back to Earth. Each member of the crew had their own air pack containing several minutes of air for emergencies, and evidence suggests that several of these packs were manually activated. Dr. Kerwin speculated that a sudden drop in cabin pressure might have rendered all 7 astronauts unconscious, shielding them from the tragedy unfolding. However, he noted that the absence of significant damage to the mid-deck floor suggested that a rapid pressure drop did not occur. If the pressure had decreased gradually, the crew would have likely remained conscious and aware during the final 25 seconds of their lives. Before the Challenger disaster, NASA had maintained an impressive safety record in space travel with no astronauts lost during spaceflight. The only previous fatalities in the program occurred during the Apollo 1 mission, where astronauts Roger Chaffee, Virgil Gus Grissom, and Edward White tragically perished in a fire during a ground test on January 27, 1967. January 28th held significance beyond being the scheduled launch date for the Challenger. It was also the day earmarked for President Ronald Reagan's State of the Union address. However, given the gravity of the disaster occurring just 6 hours prior, President Reagan chose to postpone his annual speech and instead addressed the nation directly to provide updates on the tragedy. In his address, President Reagan paid tribute to the crew of the Space Shuttle Challenger, recognizing their courage and commitment. His words, delivered with sincerity and empathy, resonated deeply with the American public and would be remembered as one of Reagan's most poignant speeches. This acknowledgement was particularly noteworthy for a leader known as the Great Communicator, underscoring the profound impact of the Challenger disaster on the nation. Relatively few people actually saw the Challenger disaster unfold on live television. Despite the widespread belief that millions of viewers witnessed the Challenger disaster unfold live, the reality is that the majority of people actually watched taped replays of the event. Most major networks cut away from the launch once the shuttle broke apart, and the tragic incident occurred at a time, 11:39 a.m. Eastern Time on a Tuesday, when many individuals were either in school or at work. CNN stands out as an exception, as it broadcasted the launch in its entirety. However, it's important to note that cable news was still a relatively new phenomenon during that period, and satellite dishes were not as commonplace as they are today. Although the live viewership might have been limited, NASA's arrangement for a satellite broadcast into many schools brought the disaster directly into the lives of countless schoolchildren. This broadcast, especially significant due to Krista McAuliffe's involvement in the mission, left a lasting impression on those who witnessed it, shaping their childhood memories in profound ways. The Challenger in popular culture. The Challenger explosion left a profound impact on not just the scientific community, but also on artists across various mediums, inspiring them to commemorate the tragedy through their work. Among these creative expressions, the 1986 Rendezvous Houston concert stands out as a poignant tribute. Musician Jean-Michel Jarre, a close friend of Challenger crew member Ronald McNair, performed a saxophone solo during the concert, originally intended for McNair to play in space. This performance was significant as it was meant to be the first professionally produced track recorded in space, symbolizing the connection between art and exploration. In addition to musical tributes, several prominent musicians, including John Denver, Adam Young, Beyoncé, and Frank Turner, created songs inspired by the Challenger disaster. Furthermore, the impact of the Challenger explosion extended to the realm of television, with several TV shows dedicating episodes to honor the crew and commemorate the event. Shows like Punky Brewster and Star Trek incorporated the tragedy into their storylines. Remnants of the shuttle washed ashore 10 years later. Even years after the official investigations had concluded, remnants of the Challenger disaster continued to emerge along the Florida coastline. In December 1996, approximately 11 years following the tragic event, beachgoers stumbled upon a significant discovery at Cocoa Beach, just 20 miles away from the Kennedy Space Center. NASA's Ron Phelps described the find, highlighting the magnitude of the debris. This piece, structurally, is the complete inboard elevation of the left wing, and that's like 8 feet on one end by 6 feet on the other by 14 feet long. So it's a big piece. It weighed several hundred pounds. We had to use a front-end loader to actually pick it up and move it off the beach. The wreckage was sealed in missile silos. Approximately 120 tons of debris, constituting roughly 30% of the Challenger's total structure, were recovered from the ocean floor. This wreckage was carefully stored in abandoned Minuteman missile silos located at Cape Canaveral. These silos, known as Complex 31 and 32, were originally used to house intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, until 1970. Despite their historical significance, these silos are primarily intended to serve as storage facilities rather than memorials. As such, they remain sealed, preserving the remnants of the Challenger as a testament to the tragic events of that fateful day. Neil Armstrong took part in the investigation. The Challenger explosion served as a stark reminder of the hazards associated with space travel, surpassing even the impact of the Apollo 1 tragedy in 1967. As the first live televised disaster in the history of space exploration, it prompted immediate action from President Ronald Reagan, who established the Rogers Commission to investigate and ascertain the root cause of the catastrophe. Among the members of the investigative committee was Neil Armstrong, renowned as the commander of Apollo 11, who served as the vice chairman. The committee also included Sally Ride, the trailblazing astronaut who made history as the first American woman to journey into space. Together, they worked diligently to uncover the factors that led to the Challenger disaster, striving to ensure the safety of future space missions. The shuttle completed 9 successful missions before the disaster. The Challenger shuttle had its origins as a test vehicle in 1975 when it was designated as STA-099. Spending nearly a year undergoing rigorous vibration testing in a hydraulic rig, it served as a crucial component of the Space Shuttle program. However, it wasn't until 1979 that NASA decided to transition this test vessel into a fully operational spacecraft. In 1983, the Challenger embarked on its inaugural mission, marking a significant milestone in the Space Shuttle program. This historic flight included the program's first-ever spacewalk, showcasing the shuttle's versatility and capabilities. Notably, the Challenger also made history by carrying the first female American astronaut, Sally Ride, and the first African-American astronaut, Guion Bluford, into space. The space program stalled for 3 years. The disaster prompted an urgent demand for the immediate suspension of the Space Shuttle program. Over the next 3 years, NASA diligently worked to integrate the recommendations put forth by the Rogers Commission, aiming to prevent similar issues from arising in the future. Their efforts proved successful, as there were no major incidents until 2003, when Columbia disintegrated upon re-entry. However, the circumstances surrounding the Columbia's crash were distinct from those of the Challenger disaster. The safety measures implemented following the Challenger incident were instrumental in averting further tragedies, underscoring the effectiveness of NASA's ongoing research and improvements. NASA violated mission rules for the launch. Investigations uncovered deliberate violations of launch protocols by NASA in their push to proceed with the Challenger launch. Engineers had cautioned against launching due to concerns about the cold temperatures, warning that it would breach established NASA regulations. Alongside the risk posed by the O-rings, there were also apprehensions regarding the fuel's performance. According to Ken Iliff, a former chief scientist at NASA, the primary cause of the Challenger accident was the breach of multiple mission rules. Speculation arose that the decision to proceed with the launch stemmed from the ambitious goals of the space program. The Reagan administration aimed to showcase the United States' capability to conduct regular and successful space missions, potentially influencing the decision-making process. Big Bird of Sesame Street almost joined the crew. NASA officials entertained the idea of having Big Bird on board the Challenger, going as far as reaching out to Sesame Street and Carol Spinney, the actor who portrayed the iconic character. Spinney was considered as a potential passenger for the mission. The initiative by NASA's public relations team to engage children was what ultimately led to the selection of schoolteacher Krista McAuliffe for the ill-fated mission. Spinney continued to discuss the topic over the years. In 2015, NASA issued an official statement confirming, "A review of past documentation indicates there were initial discussions with Sesame Street regarding their potential involvement in a Challenger flight, but that proposal was never authorized." A soccer ball went into space. Astronaut Ellison Onizuka brought along a soccer ball that had been used by his daughter's Houston High School soccer team for the Challenger mission. After the tragedy, the ball was recovered from the wreckage and returned to Onizuka's daughter, Janelle. In remembrance of her father, she displayed the ball at Clear Lake High School. For 30 years, the soccer ball remained at the school until another astronaut, Shane Kimbrough, inquired if any specific items could accompany him on a mission to the International Space Station. The school offered the ball, and Kimbrough tweeted a photo of it floating in zero gravity aboard the spacecraft. Salvage crews found remains. The shuttle exploded just 73 seconds after liftoff, scattering wreckage across the Atlantic Ocean east of Florida. It was a painstaking process that took weeks to recover all the pieces. Navy divers played a crucial role, locating debris, including the remains of the astronauts, roughly 15 miles east of Cape Canaveral on the ocean floor. Once identified, the remains were returned to their respective families. However, for those that couldn't be identified, they were laid to rest under a monument at Arlington National Cemetery. Robin Williams recorded a personal message for the crew of the next flight. The first flight after the tragedy was fraught with apprehension and anxiety. Scheduled for takeoff in 1988, just 2 years after the devastating explosion, the Shuttle Discovery embarked on its mission. Around that time, Robin Williams had captured hearts in the film Good Morning, Vietnam. NASA officials saw an opportunity to inject some levity into the crew's routine by including Williams in their downloaded media. As part of the tradition of astronaut wake-up songs, typically sourced from friends and family, Williams contributed a memorable message. Drawing from his iconic role, he quipped, "Houston's great, but give me that 0G." His message was crafted to lift spirits and bring a smile to the faces of the astronauts during their mission. One engineer still blames himself. In a poignant 2016 interview, Bob Eberling, a key figure in the events leading up to the Challenger disaster, opened up about his enduring sorrow and sense of responsibility. Despite the passage of 3 decades, the weight of that tragic day still lingered heavily on his shoulders. Eberling candidly shared his regret over not being able to prevent the catastrophic outcome, reflecting on his futile attempts to convince NASA officials that the launch was doomed. Even after retirement, Eberling grappled with deep emotional turmoil, plunging into a profound state of melancholy. "I could have done more," he confessed to NPR, haunted by the belief that he should have taken a stronger stand against proceeding with the launch. Seeking solace, he turned to his faith, finding comfort in the sanctuary of his church. Yet, despite his efforts to find peace, the memories of that fateful day persisted, intertwined with feelings of anguish and remorse. Eberling's thoughts often drifted to the victims and the decisions made by those in managerial positions who disregarded his warnings. He harbored a profound sense of inadequacy, questioning why he was chosen for a role that ultimately ended in tragedy. Reflecting on his own role in the chain of events, Eberling expressed a profound sense of self-doubt, suggesting that perhaps he was ill-suited for the task at hand. "I think that was one of the mistakes that God made," he mused. "He shouldn't have picked me for the job. But next time I talk to him, I'm going to ask him, 'Why me? You picked a loser.'" It took 22 years before a civilian was able to fly into space. Christa McAuliffe was integral to NASA's endeavor to involve civilians in space missions. However, following the tragedy, all plans for civilian spaceflight were halted. It wasn't until 22 years later, in 2007, that Barbara Morgan finally joined the Endeavour mission. Interestingly, Morgan had served as McAuliffe's backup for the ill-fated Challenger mission. Like McAuliffe, she was also an educator, specializing in English and social studies. Settlement. In 1988, 4 families affected by the Challenger disaster reached a settlement with Morton Thiokol, the manufacturer found responsible for the mechanical failure. Among those families were the relatives of Francis Scobie, Ellison S. Onizuka, Gregory P. Jarvis, and Krista McAuliffe. Representing them was Leo B. Lynn Jr., the law partner of McAuliffe's husband, Steve. The total settlement among the 10 individuals amounted to $7.7 million, which, as of August 2017, equated to $16.3 million. However, attorney Ronald Christ, who had successfully represented families affected by the 1967 Apollo shuttle disaster, deemed the payout woefully inadequate. He believed the families should have accepted nothing less than $20 million. Understandably, their desire to conclude the legal proceedings was entirely justifiable. Soviet response. The common perception in American memory regarding relations with the USSR suggests intense rivalry, making the Challenger disaster seem like an opportunity for Soviet propaganda to revel in American space program mishaps during the heated space race era. However, Soviet media reacted quite differently, treating the tragedy with profound shock. Contrary to expectations, reports from the New York Times indicated that the average Muscovite was surprised by the absence of an ejection system on a technologically advanced American shuttle. Instead of exploiting the incident for propaganda, Soviet media aired footage accompanied by mournful Glenn Miller music as a gesture of solidarity. Additionally, Soviet cosmonauts conveyed condolences directly to NASA via telegram. Yet, as noted by BBC Russia correspondent Famil Ismailov, by the disaster's anniversary in 2016, Russian state media had neither published memorials nor mentioned the event, and it wasn't a topic of conversation. Ismailov suggested that this silence reflected more on the prevailing mood in Russia in 2016 than on the sincerity of the Russian people's sentiments at the time of the disaster. As we reflect on the Challenger disaster and its enduring impact, it's important to honor the memory of the brave souls who lost their lives on that tragic day. Do you remember where you were when the Challenger disaster unfolded? Share your memories and reflections with us in the comments below. And if you found this exploration of the Challenger disaster insightful, be sure to like and subscribe for more content, uncovering shocking facts and untold stories about historical events.